What happens when a judge mocks a black man in open court, only to find out he messed with the wrong person? What happened next left everyone speechless. You ever have one of those mornings that feel like the universe is testing you? Yeah, that was me. Sun barely up, sky painted orange like it owed somebody money. And I'm standing on my porch with a cup of coffee strong enough to wake the dead. My neighbor's dog, Rusty, is barking like he's auditioning for a horror flick. And all I can think about is how peace and quiet became a luxury in this neighborhood. I was dressed sharp, charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, navy tie knotted tight. Nothing flashy, clean, professional. My mama always said, "People judge you before you open your mouth, so make 'em choke on their assumptions." She wasn't wrong. Today I had court, but not the way you think. I wasn't there to defend myself. I wasn't there to beg for mercy. Nope. I was heading to support a kid I mentor. Marcus, 17, smart as a whip. But life's been kicking him in the teeth since birth. He got caught up in some nonsense. Wrong place, wrong friends, wrong time. And the system? It doesn't give second chances to boys who look like him, like me. So, I promised his mama I'd be there. That's what I do. I show up. I've spent years talking to kids about staying out of trouble, about building something bigger than the stereotypes they throw at us. And when they stumble, I don't walk away. That's not how I'm wired. Walking into the courthouse, I felt that familiar chill. You know the one, where the walls are white, the floors shine like they've been scrubbed with bleach and broken dreams, and every set of eyes on you says, "You don't belong here." Security guard at the metal detector looked me up and down like I smuggled a felony in my briefcase. "Empty your pockets," he said, voice flat. No hello, no good morning. I gave him a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Keys, wallet, phone, no attitude included. Dropped my stuff in the tray like I've done 1,000 times. His lips twisted, but he let me through. Small victories, right? Courtroom smelled like old books and cheap perfume. People whispering, papers shuffling, the judge's bench sitting up there like a throne. And speaking of thrones, there he was, Judge Whitaker. White hair slicked back, face like it had been carved from arrogance and privilege. The kind of man who still says things like, "Back in my day," like anybody asked. He wore that black robe like it gave him superpowers. I slid into a bench near the front. Marcus sat 2 rows ahead, shoulders hunched, suit too big for his skinny frame. His mama, Miss Lorraine, squeezed his hand like she was holding him together. My heart cracked a little. I remembered being that kid once, praying somebody saw more in me than a case number. When the session started, Whitaker leaned forward, peering over his glasses like he was about to deliver the gospel. "State versus Marcus Johnson," he announced, voice dripping with boredom. "Bring the defendant forward." Marcus stood, legs shaking. I swear, that boy looked like a deer on the highway, staring down headlights. I wanted to tell him to breathe, but this wasn't my stage. Not yet. The prosecutor, a blond guy with teeth so white they should have come with a warning label, started listing charges. Trespassing, vandalism, loitering, all because Marcus and his friends hung out near a construction site. Kids being kids. But in this zip code, they call that criminal activity. Then Whitaker looked at Marcus and chuckled. Actually, chuckled. "Mr. Johnson," he said, like he was talking to the punchline of a bad joke, "I suppose you had nothing better to do than disrupt hard-working citizens? Or were you auditioning for a mugshot portfolio?" The courtroom laughed. I felt heat crawl up my neck. That sound, it was knives. cutting into that boy's dignity, carving up his hope. Marcus dropped his eyes, and something inside me snapped. I stood up, slow, deliberate. All heads turned like I was a storm rolling in. Whitaker's gaze landed on me, sharp as barbed wire. "And you are?" he asked, his tone pure annoyance. "Name's Carter," I said, voice calm but carrying weight. "I'm here for Marcus," he smirked. "Family?" "Something like that," I replied. My smile didn't reach my eyes. Whitaker waved a dismissive hand. "Sit down, Mr. Carter. This is a courtroom, not a reunion." I stayed standing. "With all due respect, Your Honor, this isn't a comedy club either, unless mocking a teenager counts as jurisprudence these days." Gasps rippled through the room like a wave. Whitaker's face turned the color of expired mayonnaise. "Excuse me?" he hissed. "You heard me," I said, still calm, still steady. "You think humiliating a kid makes you tough? Makes you a judge? All I see is a man hiding behind a robe because real power scares him. You could have bottled the silence in that room and sold it for diamonds. Every eye was on us, me and him, locked in a stare that could have set paper on fire. And in that moment, I didn't care about rules, didn't care about consequences. All I cared about was that boy standing there, drowning in a system designed to pull him under." Whitaker leaned back, lips curling into something ugly. "Bailiff," he said, voice like ice, "escort this gentleman out." The bailiff, big guy with a gut that spoke fluent donuts, started toward me. I didn't flinch, just reached into my jacket, slow and smooth, like I had all the time in the world. Gasps got louder. Bailiff froze mid-step, because what I pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a badge, gold, gleaming, heavy with authority. FBI. I held it up, let the room drink it in, let Whitaker choke on the silence. "Before you put your hands on me," I said, voice low, razor sharp, "you might want to think real hard about the paperwork that comes with assaulting a federal agent." The color drained from his face so fast you'd think someone pulled the plug. His mouth opened, closed, like a fish out of water. The bailiff backed off like I was radioactive. But I didn't smile. Not yet. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. When you drop a badge like that, people expect the room to go silent and stay silent. But silence? It's fragile. It cracks quick when fear starts talking. Whitaker's eyes darted from the badge to my face, then back again, like he was trying to figure out how the hell his little courtroom turned into a federal landmine. He cleared his throat, the sound dry and shaky, then slammed his gavel like it owed him money. "This is highly irregular," he barked, his voice just a little too high-pitched for a man who thinks he runs the world. "Highly inappropriate. This is contempt of court." Contempt of court. Cute. Like I hadn't heard that song before. I slipped the badge back into my jacket slow enough for everybody to memorize that moment. "With all due respect, Your Honor," I said, letting that word roll off my tongue like it was dipped in sarcasm. "You wanted to know who I am. Now you know." Behind me, I heard whispers growing like weeds. Somebody hissed, "FBI?" Did he say FBI? People shifting on benches like they were sitting on hot coals. Marcus turned his head just enough for our eyes to meet. That kid's face? A mix of shock, hope, and the kind of disbelief that makes you wonder if angels wear suits sometimes. Whitaker, though, oh, he hated it. I could see his jaw clenching so hard I thought his teeth might file for divorce. He wasn't used to this. Men like him? They live for control. They breathe it in like oxygen. And I just snatched it out the air like a thief in broad daylight. He tried to recover, to sound like the king of this castle again. "Mr. Carter, Agent Carter, if that is indeed who you are, this court does not take kindly to theatrics." "Theatrics?" I chuckled, low and steady, the kind of laugh that says, "You really want to play this game?" "Sir, what I don't take kindly to is a man in a robe making a joke out of a kid's life. You're not hosting a late-night show. You're holding the gavel that decides futures." Gasps rippled again, softer this time, like the air itself was holding its breath. Whitaker leaned forward, eyes sharp, but his voice wobbled just enough to give him away. "You are dangerously close to crossing a line." I took a step closer to the bench, my shoes clicking against the polished floor like warning shots. "Funny thing about lines," I said, "they're only scary when you don't know what's on the other side." That broke him. The mask cracked, and I saw it. Pure, uncut anger. But there was fear under it too. And fear? That's leverage. That's currency in a room like this. He slammed the gavel again. "Court is in recess. 10 minutes." His voice boomed, desperate for control, but the cracks were showing. He stood, robe swishing like a curtain hiding the chaos backstage, and disappeared through a side door. The bailiff gave me a look that could curdle milk, but he didn't move. Not after what he saw. I exhaled slow, like smoke leaving a fire that still burns hot inside. People started buzzing, whispers sharp enough to cut glass. I heard words like FBI, set up, and he's done for, floating around like confetti at a funeral. Miss Lorraine was on me before I could blink. "Lord have mercy," she whispered, eyes wide, voice trembling. You didn't tell us you was—" "Not the time, Miss Lorraine," I said softly, my hand on her shoulder. "Take a breath. Stay calm. This ain't over." Marcus just stared at me, mouth half open, like I'd pulled a rabbit out of a hat and made it dance. You're really FBI?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I gave him the smallest nod. "And right now, you need to keep your head down and let me handle what's coming." Because what was coming? Oh, I could feel it. The storm was gathering, dark and mean, ready to tear through anyone standing in its path. I walked out into the hallway, and the air out there was thicker than a politician's promise. Lawyers whispering in clusters, deputies pretending they weren't staring, people moving like they were allergic to eye contact. And then, like a shadow sliding out of nowhere, here came Prosecutor Prettyboy. Thompson, that was his name, striding toward me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Well," he said, voice slick as oil, "that was quite the performance in there." Performance? I tilted my head, giving him the kind of look that strips paint off walls. "Funny. I thought standing up for justice was part of the job." He chuckled, but it sounded hollow. "You do realize," he said, dropping his voice low like we were sharing secrets, "that pulling rank in a courtroom? That's a dangerous move. Makes people wonder what you're hiding." I stepped in close enough for him to smell the truth on me. "The only thing I'm hiding," I said, "is my patience. And trust me, counselor, you don't want to see what happens when I run out." His jaw twitched. Just a flicker, but I saw it. Then he smiled again, fake as a $3 bill, and walked off, his shoes tapping out a rhythm that sounded a lot like retreat. But me, I wasn't retreating. Not then, not ever. When court resumed, the tension hit like a brick wall. Whitaker was back, face pale but eyes hard, like a man who just got humiliated and spent 10 minutes convincing himself it didn't happen. He started talking rules, decorum, All that legal gospel meant to remind everyone who wears the crown in this little kingdom. And sure, I let him talk. Let him drown in his own words while I sat there, calm as Sunday morning, knowing the truth. The balance had shifted. The room knew it. He knew it. But power? It's like a cornered animal. The more scared it gets, the harder it bites. And I had a feeling Judge Whittaker was about to bare his teeth. You ever seen a man fight for control so hard it looks like he's strangling himself? That was Whittaker when the recess ended. He walked back into that courtroom like a preacher who just got caught in a scandal. Robe flowing, chin high. But his hands, they were twitching. Couldn't hide that. I sat there, legs crossed, face calm. But my mind? It was sharp as a blade fresh off the stone. I knew what was coming. He was about to pull every trick in the book, and probably a few from books that ain't even written yet. He banged that gavel so hard I swear the sound cracked the air. "This court," he announced, "will proceed with order." Voice strong, but his eyes, they betrayed him. Fear has a way of leaking out, no matter how tight you screw the lid. Marcus stood again, hands shaking, eyes darting like a man walking a tightrope over fire. And me? I stayed seated, letting the weight of that badge in my pocket remind me why I was here. Not for me. For that boy. For every kid who ever got dragged into a system that chews 'em up and spits 'em out like gum gone flavorless. Whittaker started his little sermon on law and respect, but I wasn't hearing the words. I was watching the cracks in his armor widen with every syllable. He was bleeding insecurity, and the vultures in the room could smell it. Then it happened. He tried to take his shot. "Mr. Johnson," he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Perhaps your mentor," he practically choked on the word, "should teach you that respect is earned, not demanded." The courtroom murmured like bees in a jar. And me? I smiled. Slow, deliberate, the kind of smile that says, "You sure you want to go down this road, old man?" I stood. Again. And this time, nobody told me to sit down. "With all due respect, Your Honor," I said, my tone cool as midnight, "respect isn't a prize you hand out at the end of a circus act. It's a baseline, a floor, not a ceiling. But maybe you wouldn't understand that, sitting on your throne, looking down at people like they're pieces on your little chessboard." Gasps sliced through the room like knives. I could feel the walls lean in, listening. Whittaker gripped that gavel like he wanted to beat the truth out of it. "Agent Carter," he snapped, his voice cracking just enough for me to taste the fear under the rage. "I will not tolerate." "Yeah," I cut him off, stepping closer, voice rising like a storm rolling in. "You won't tolerate. That's your favorite phrase, ain't it? You won't tolerate kids being kids. You won't tolerate second chances. You won't tolerate being reminded that that robe don't make you God." That did it. The room went dead silent, like somebody pulled the plug on reality. Whittaker's face turned a shade of red you don't see in nature. His hand shot up, gavel raised, ready to slam it like the hammer of judgment. And then I moved, didn't raise my voice, didn't raise my hands, just reached into my jacket again, slow as sunrise. The room froze like a photo. Even the air stopped breathing. I pulled out the badge, held it high. Let the gold catch the light and burn it into every retelling of this day. "This," I said, voice calm but carrying like a hymn, "is what keeps this country safe. And let me tell you something, Your Honor. When you mock a kid for sport, you ain't just breaking a boy. You're breaking the very thing you swore to protect. Justice." Whittaker's hand trembled. That gavel never dropped. His eyes, though, They dropped lower than his pride. Then I laid it out. Every word precise, like bullets from a clean barrel. "I've been watching this case," I said, turning so the whole room could hear. "Watching how a system built to protect ends up choking the life out of kids like Marcus. You think that's justice? Nah, that's ego in a black robe." The whispers turned into a hum, then a roar. Phones came out, screens glowing like fireflies. Somebody was live streaming. Hell, maybe everybody was. This wasn't just a courtroom anymore. It was a stage, and the truth was the headline act. Whitaker opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Nothing but air and shame. "Here's what's gonna happen," I continued, voice steady as steel. "Marcus Johnson walks out of here today. You got a problem with that? You can take it up with the Bureau. Or, better yet, with the cameras recording every second of this mess." Boom! That was the kill shot. Whitaker sagged back in his chair like a puppet with its strings cut. He looked around, saw the eyes on him, hungry, judging, recording, and he knew. Game over. "Case dismissed," he croaked, voice barely more than a whisper. And just like that, it was done. Marcus stumbled toward me like a man walking out of a storm he never thought would end. His mama? She was crying, praising every saint in the book, clutching my hands like they were the last lifeboat on the Titanic. Me? I just stood there, calm on the surface, but inside, I was a hurricane of relief, rage, and something that felt like victory, but not the kind you celebrate. The kind that makes you wonder why the hell you had to fight this hard in the first place. As we walked out, cameras flashing like lightning, reporters shouting questions, one thought burned in my head. This wasn't the last battle. Not by a long shot. But today, we won.